Welcome back. I'm Devi Daly, and today's practice is a full body yin practice with an extra focus on half butterfly pose. So this gets into the hamstrings. There are a number of variations of half butterfly pose and a number of different ways to get into the hamstrings in Yin Yoga that work better, some for different bodies than others. So we will start in a seated position, and all you'll need for this practice is a strap or a belt. And if you have other yoga props available, have them nearby because you might end up wanting to use them. I will see you in a sec. Let's just dive right into the half butterfly pose. So we sit with the left leg forward and the right leg bent. And we'll just do this for 1 minute to orient to the pose that we're going to then be exploring and doing a bunch of variations of. So left leg forward, right leg bent, and coming forward over the leg. And not worrying too much right now about special alignment choices or anything like that. Softening forward over your leg. Your hands can be on the shin, the ankle, the foot, doesn't matter so much where they are. And as you relax here, just notice where you feel this. There is probably some combination of sensation in the backs of the legs, back of the left leg, and the spine in the back of the torso in general. So as we slowly come up, we will change to the second side. Just 1 minute. And we will spend some more time in the pose later after we explore some further possibilities. And just notice how when I don't give you much detail or instruction here, which I'm doing on purpose, what angles do you tend to choose? Where do you choose to put your hands? Have you chosen to use a prop? Just notice what these choices are and what informs those choices. What is it that you are trying to achieve by the small changes that you do? And slowly release the pose. Coming up and leaning back on your hands with your knees bent, and let your knees just come side to side. Little windshield wiper kind of action. Now let's come into butterfly pose, so a longer yin pose, and starting to warm up the spine here. Soles of your feet together, and your feet can be closer to you or farther away, and coming forward over the legs. So this is butterfly pose, and half butterfly, the name of it comes from this pose, half butterfly, just one leg. But we have mostly a different target area for the two different poses, even though they share the name. So 3 minutes here in butterfly, and here we are warming up the spine. You can use a pillow under your seat, you can use support under the knees here, whatever feels good for you today. Maybe you're clasping around your toes, or maybe you're resting your hands on the ground. And this is a nice symmetrical forward bend to get into half of the range of motion that half butterfly asks of us. So we're getting just the spine, kind of taking the hamstrings out of the equation. So arrange yourself so that you feel a stretch in your back, in your spine. Let your head soften down, let your shoulders relax so that you do stretch the spine and the fascia that winds around and goes up and down the spinal column. And exploring forward bends in Yin Yoga it makes it important to understand what Yin yogis come to love in general is that we do not go for a straight spine, which is a common aesthetic instruction in a lot of yoga, is to straighten the spine. In hatha yoga and a lot of the more popular forms of yoga, we are told to straighten the spine, to keep the shoulders back and such. And here we're doing quite the opposite, because when you straighten your spine, you are strengthening the muscles, you're engaging the muscles of the spine, which is not a bad thing to do, it's wonderful. However, in yin, we're wanting to do quite the opposite. We're wanting to stretch those tissues along the back of the spine and the back of the body in general. And the way to stretch those is to soften the shoulders, to soften the head. Let the head relax. For some people, this becomes difficult if the head is hanging at a certain angle that just makes the body uncomfortable. And for you, if that's you, you can use a bolster or pillows under your head or under your chest, as many as you need. Continuing to soften here. Paying particular attention to the back body, to the torso. The latissimus, which is the large muscle in the back, and all the way down to the sacrum where the latissimus attaches. And now slowly bring the spine upright and pause at the top when the spine is vertical. Feel the head on top of the spine balancing. Slowly draw the legs together and slowly come onto your back, resting on the back for 1 full minute. Eyes closed. Arms can be angled out at the sides, legs can be spread wide apart so that you are able to feel the energy moving through the body after that first long pose. Starting to wake up the energy of the torso, of the spine. And feel your breath as you rest. And bend the knees, hug them into the chest, wrap the arms around, and let's take a couple of breaths here. Roll over to one side and come up to hands and knees for dragon pose with the right leg forward. So bending the spine the opposite way now. Hands can be on either side of this front foot, or they can both be on the inside of the foot. 2 minutes here. Your variation of dragon. Any other variation that you might be familiar with, please feel free to take it. In this posture, we're stretching into the front of the left thigh, front of the left hip, and also maybe starting to get a little bit of feeling of a back bend in the left side of the sacrum and lower back especially. Staying connected to your experience in the pose. Where are you feeling it? What feels like stretching? What feels more like compression, if you have that anywhere? Now moving into the half split pose. So here is a variation of half butterfly. When we come into this half split, we're stretching the back of the leg in an asymmetrical way. Coming over the leg, you can be on the inside if you want to keep your hands on the inside and have them there for the lunge, or have them on either side. So this will be maybe a little bit easier for some people, or a little more intense in the hamstrings. And one of the great ways to modify this is to have your hands on a couple of blocks or some other kind of support here. So if you struggled with the first posture we did with the half butterfly pose, then this might be a wonderful alternative for you. You do need to make sure your back knee has plenty of padding under it. If you're not on a carpet like I am, then fold a blanket or double up your mat or something like that. So the seated postures are not for everyone, and so part of this practice of exploring half butterfly as a seated posture is to show you the alternatives, to move you through the alternatives of other ways to get into the same range of motion. So that's the first side of that half split variation. Let's step back into downward facing dog. Walk your legs, bending one knee at a time. And now take the other leg forward for dragon pose. Left leg in the front. Your variation of dragon pose for 2 minutes. Again, noticing where the sensation is, usually somewhere around the front of the right thigh, the front of the right hip, and then maybe also the back bending sensation, this time more on the right side of the back, lower back, sacrum. And now taking it into half split pose. And the front leg is moving towards straight, but if it wants to maintain some bend, that's fine, as long as the stretch is still here in the back of the leg and the left hamstrings. And as you feel into your angles in this pose, keep in mind there are 3 hamstrings on each side. We have a middle hamstring and one on the right and one on the left of each leg. And so as you angle your torso in different directions, you will feel maybe the lateral hamstring more, maybe the medial. And you might find that one particular angle feels better and you want to hang out there. All right, slowly now bring it forward onto the front leg and step back to downward dog. Walk the legs once again in downward dog. And drop the knees and come into child's pose to rest. And slowly now coming up, make your way onto your back and have your strap nearby. We won't use the strap first thing, but we will use it in this sequence on the back. So lying down on the back, hug both knees into your chest. And just like we just did in child's pose, we're just stretching the back body. If it feels good, you can rock side to side. And now come to center, clasp the hands around just the right knee and extend the left leg forward onto the mat. So getting into the back of the body, tuck your chin toward your chest a little to get more length in the back of the neck. And now taking your strap in your right hand and place it around the foot and extend the leg up. So right hand holding both parts of the strap, or if you prefer to hold two parts of the strap in each one in each hand, that's also okay. And here, if you enjoy having the arms down toward the ground more, elbows on the floor, that's fine, or more extended. How you're holding the strap is not really that important. What is important is how you're experiencing this stretch in the back of the leg. So what we have here is kind of, we're used to wanting to bring the leg straight up in the air, right? Because that's something that just sort of seems like, I don't know, it's an aesthetic instruction to have the legs straight up. And so we're going to do that for the first minute, but then we're going to explore different angles and see how that feels. And something about how the body is built is that when the leg is straight up or even slightly crossed over toward the left, you're in the most kind of restricted position for your hamstrings, which might feel good. It might be the depth of stretch that your body wants today, or it might be more limiting. And so for some of you, the leg might be farther out there. Different angles are quite common here. For me, with my flexibilities, I just happen to go kind of straight up and then I feel a good stretch, but there's certainly no magic formula about being vertical. So let's take it now, whatever your angle forward and back is, take that angle out to the right side. So about 1/3 of the way to begin. And now just explore this. Can your leg think about coming closer to you, your toes closer to your head here? Do you want to move the strap just into your right hand so that it's easier to do this without rolling over with the left hand? And now take it a little farther out, so you're about 2/3 of the way. And you might mostly still feel this in the back of the leg, or you might begin to feel this as a groin stretch as well, as an inner thigh stretch. And go ahead and let it come all the way out, whatever that is for you, all the way out to the right side. And it might be helpful to let this left hand reach out to the left as a kind of a counterbalance. Good, and now let's take one last minute to find what feels like the most effective angle for you to stretch your hamstrings. Exploring if you need to do a little movement in those ranges of motion that we just did to find what feels like the most effective way to get into this area. Finding that place, resting there, one or both hands on the strap. And if you have more flexibility in this range, you maybe don't need the strap. You've got your hand to your foot or your big toe or something. All right, very good. Let's release this down now and bring it right into figure 4 pose. So your strap will go to the side, right ankle over the left knee, clasp the hands behind the left thigh or in front of the left shin, and feel free to use some support under your head if it helps you in the pose. Moving our target, moving our focus to the buttocks now, to the right side, right buttocks. And resting here for 2 minutes total. Very good. Now release, but keep this right foot connected to the left knee as you extend the left leg out. And we're moving toward this spinal twist variation, taking the knee across and over to the left side and your right arm out to the right side. Another 2 minutes here. Maybe inching the hips back toward the midline if they ended up skewed over to the left. Any variation or propping you'd like to use here to make your twist comfortable. And releasing the twist, bring it back up to the center. And straighten both legs out. Take a 1-minute rest before we do that epic sequence on the second side. Closing the eyes. Noticing what you feel after working into the right leg in a number of ways, the hamstrings especially, and also the outer hip, and then also that twisting to one side. Notice how the two sides differ from each other now and what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. And now taking it to your second side. So left knee comes in toward the chest, clasp around the left knee, hug it in. Back of the neck is long. And take your strap now around your left foot, extend it up, beginning with the straight up position before exploring different angles. Straight up, when I say straight up, I mean just midline. So if your straight up might be here, it might be toes way over the head. It's just more of a midline straight up rather than out to the side. So this, we spoke about the alternatives to half butterfly pose, and so far we're spending more time on the alternatives than the actual half butterfly pose, but that is where we're going. But the seated forward bends in yoga are the number one thing that scares people off of yoga. And if you're here and if you've made it this far into this practice, you're probably not one of the people who's been scared off by by seated postures and seated forward bends, but it's something that is good to share with people, is that you can do a very thorough, very wonderful yin yoga practice without having to do any seated postures. And some people's bodies it just doesn't work for them to do seated poses. The way their bones are, and so there's a lot of different ways to get into all these ranges of motion, and this is one of them. This is a fine alternative to half butterfly pose. You could do this every time instead of ever doing half butterfly pose if you want. So let's begin to explore these angles, taking the leg out to the side about 30 degrees or about 1/3 of the way. And noticing if you try to bring the leg a little farther in, what happens? Farther toward your head. And take it more out to the side, maybe 2/3 of the way now, not all the way. And what is all the way is different for everybody. Some people's foot comes very close to the ground or on the ground when they are all the way. Some people, this angle that I'm doing here is all the way because of the shape of your bones. So what is 2/3 of your range of motion? And now let's do all the way, whatever that is, and notice where the sensation has moved. Maybe it's more in the inside of the leg, maybe it's still mostly in the back of the leg. And now finding your best angle to target your hamstrings. Any movement you'd like to make here. One more minute at your favorite angle. And and it can be difficult to like get a good grip on the strap, and sometimes some sort of wrapping the strap around the hand or something can be helpful. Very good. Now moving it into figure 4, strap can move aside, left ankle over the right knee, and drawing the right knee in for 2 minutes. And slowly release, keeping a connection of the left foot to the right knee or thigh, preparing for the twist. Hips can skew over to the left and the knee comes over to the right as you roll onto the outside of the right hip, and then stretch your left arm out to the left side. 2 more minutes here. And slowly release the leg up to the center. Straighten out your hips and your shoulders and come into a resting pose again. 1 minute here to feel, now that we've done both sides, what's happening inside of the body. What are the effects of having stimulated the left hamstrings, the back of the left leg, and then the left buttocks, and that twisting posture on the left side? And feeling the difference between the right and the left side now. Maybe less of a difference, but maybe still a difference in these energies, right and left. And bending the knees, hugging them into your chest. Gently rock side to side and taking your feet onto the ground now, and a yang pose in between. After all of the forward bending and hamstrings, it can be nice to lift the hips into a little bit of a yang back bend. So taking your feet to close to the hips and then lifting up your hips. It doesn't so much matter what width the feet are, just feel whatever feels comfortable and good. And think about squeezing the glutes, squeezing the muscles along either side of the spine. You can clasp your hands under your back if that feels good, or whatever feels good here. Very good, releasing back down. And doing that another time, lifting up the hips, squeezing the glutes. See how much you can engage your hamstrings here, lifting up the tailbone into the body a little bit more. And release your body back down now. And taking it into one more lift, 3rd time's a charm. Great, and now release back down and bend the knees, roll over to one side, come up into a sitting position, and take a moment to feel the caterpillar pose, also called Paschimottanasana. We're not going to do a long yin hold of this pose, but as you come forward over the legs, just notice what is stopping you in this position. Typically it's something in here, something where the femur bone is squeezing the tissue against the pelvis bone. And we aren't necessarily conscious of that, of what's stopping us, but if we kind of think about where is the resistance coming from, if it's on a bony level, if it's the shape of the bones, then this is where it is. If there's more tensile resistance, then that's going to be more in the back of the body, the lower back, or the legs. And so if you feel it mostly in the backs of the legs and the spine or the lower back, then you're not quite at your limit of range of motion here. So this pose is something some people like, but not everyone. And one of the reasons that the half butterfly is a little more popular, when we take one leg out of the equation, what we get to do is change the angle of the pelvis. We get to play around with the angle at which the torso is trying to come forward. So by taking this leg out, I free up my pelvis to move at this maybe 45-degree angle, maybe a little more toward the leg or not. And this is effectively the same. So as you bend your right leg, it's a lot like when we were lifting our left leg up in the strap when we were on our backs. And so when I take my torso, if you want to play around with those different kinds of angles we did with the strap around the foot, it's the same as if we're in this orientation doing the torso a little more to the inside of the leg or not. So same exploration here, and eventually finding what is the best angle for today to rest in this pose. And maybe today, if you are someone who's done a lot of half butterfly and who tends to go for the same angles every time, try something new today. Try an angle more toward the inside of the leg, maybe even halfway between your two legs. So 3 minutes here. And today, since we are doing more of an exploration, if you want to explore different angles for half a minute at a time, rather than staying in the exact same position. And as you explore any different angles, notice where it moves the stretch. Does it make it be more in the hamstrings? Does it make it more in the spine? And let's come up now and take this next variation of half butterfly, which has its own name. It's called half frog. So taking this right foot back and then coming over the leg here. And this is not going to be comfortable for all of you. So if you try and do this and it's just not working for your knee or your body, then stick with this. Use props or something to make it so it's not very uncomfortable. And now we come forward for another minute. Again, you have the choice to be more directly over the leg or slightly inside the leg. And this orientation of the leg tends to tilt the pelvis anteriorly more, which means the stretch will be more in the hamstrings and less in the spine for most of us. For some people, however, this leg position just makes it all a groin stretch of the back leg, which is not a bad thing. However, it's just you're changing your target area. You're changing essentially the archetype that you're working in. All right, and one last variation is to do the half shoelace. So taking the foot on the other side of the leg. So the two knees are moving toward being on top of each other. If they don't come on top of each other entirely, if there's more separation, that's fine, but mostly just thinking about narrowing the gap between the knees, which is a totally different orientation of the pelvis that will maybe emphasize the spine more or might press with the weight of this leg on the bottom leg. It might make it more of a hamstring stretch. So these are all variations of half butterfly pose and all things that you can play around with in your Yin Yoga practice. And again, this variation is just a no-go for a lot of people's bodies. So no particular worries if that's you. And coming on up, and let's do those 3 variations on the second side. So right leg forward, starting with the half butterfly that we began with, but this time getting a little more exploration of the different angles, imagining that this right foot is in the strap and you're taking it out to different angles. Here you're just changing and playing with that angle by moving your torso side to side. And you might eventually find the angle that feels like you want to rest for a few long breaths. And now taking it into the second variation, the half frog. So taking your left foot next to your hip, and the knee could be more close to the other knee, or it can be way out to the side and back. That angle is also variable for different people, and there's not any one correct angle for it. As you come forward over the leg or slightly to the inside of the leg, notice how the choice of angle, again, makes a difference here. And now moving into the third variation, the half shoelace, taking the left knee on top of the right, or somehow narrowing that gap and coming forward over the leg. So we are exploring all the many ways to get into the hamstrings. And what's important and essential to understand about Yin Yoga is that it's not about mastering all of these poses and all of these variations. The variations all exist because we all have such different bodies, and because we have different bodies, we are all having a different experience in the postures, and that is why all of these variations exist, because different bodies have different needs. So the exploration is to find out the exploration is to help you find out what variation best suits your body and your needs. And then when you are taking a Yin Yoga class or any yoga class, and you are being directed to take half butterfly pose or a one-legged forward bend anytime, you could choose the variation that you know works best for you. And now slowly release the pose, sitting upright. And one final symmetrical forward bend. Your choice of caterpillar pose over both legs, 1 minute here, or if you'd like to come onto your back and do the snail pose, sending the legs up over the head. And after working with this focus on this range of motion, on the hamstrings and the spine, you might have a little more comfort in these symmetrical forward bends at this moment than you normally do in an everyday practice situation. So notice if that's there. Notice if you can find an extra level of softening. And now slowly releasing and coming all the way down onto your back for your final relaxation, making yourself comfortable with any additional props, pillows, extra clothes, or a blanket on top of you, an eye pillow if you'd like, and settling into the support of the floor, the influence of gravity on your arms and your legs, your hips, your shoulders, your spine. Notice the easy flow of the breath, inhaling slowly, exhaling slowly. No rush, no goal. Just this breath that's happening right now. And now gently wiggling the fingers and toes as you inhale into the belly, inhale into the heart. And as you exhale, reach your arms up over your head, interlace your fingers and press the palms up and away as you press long down through the legs and the feet. Good, and now bending the knees to roll over onto one side and come up into a comfortable seat with your spine tall. Place the palms together in front of your heart. And feel the spine upright, head balanced on top of the spine. Tailbone energetically reaching down into the earth. And the right palm and the left palm connected to each other. And chanting Om 3 times. Begin with an exhale to empty. And inhale. And that is our practice. Namaste. I hope you enjoyed the practice, and if you did, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other yoga videos. And I will see you next time.